Welcome to today's talk, where we're going to talk about speech pathology. My name is Regina DeMeo, and I'm a family law attorney in Maryland and DC. And with me today is Gabriele Nicolet, and she's the founder of Speech Kids in DC. Thanks so much for being here, Gabriele.
Thanks for having me, Regina. It's always fun to do these.
Absolutely. So, how long have you been working with families that have children with some sort of speech issues?
So I've been a speech therapist or a speech pathologist for 20 years now. 20 years. My practice is 10 years old this year. So in private practice, 10 years, and speech therapy for 20.
Wow. So, how would a family, because you work with really young kids, how would you identify um, that your clients need help? Is it through their parents that reach you directly, their doctors? Typically, how do people get to you?
Yeah, it's really a mix. So sometimes people come because their pediatrician has said that they should take a look. Not as often as I'd like and not as early as I'd like. So one of the things I really love to do is actually talk to pediatricians about when and for what to refer. Because we know that early intervention works, right? We know that the earlier we deal with a problem, the less we're having to peel off sort of other problems that go on top of an original speech and language problem. And so the earlier we deal with speech and language issues, communication issues, we really get a better outcome. But pediatricians are one source. Sometimes parents are worried if it's a second child and they have a comparison, they usually get on that pretty early. And so then parents are usually Googling, they're asking Dr. Google, and they come to my practice through them, through Google. The other referral source can be preschool teachers.
Okay.
And those tend to be like the 3-year-olds who, they've been home with a caregiver and now they go to preschool and teacher notices something's kind of going on. And preschool teachers have seen a lot of kids, right? So they've got a good radar when it comes to something that might be outside the scope of what we want to see or tend to see in preschool. And so they might flag a child and say, I think there's some issues with communication. You should maybe go see a speech therapist. So that's sort of how they come.
Okay. And during COVID, like how has that impacted your ability to provide services?
So we went from being 100% in-person itinerant service, meaning I was in homes and mostly preschools, also some big kid schools, to treat clients, and we do face-to-face one-on-one, or we did, to being 100% virtual as of 3 days after the shutdown in March. And so we are right now exclusively a virtual practice. We're doing that in a really, in a variety of ways. So because our clients are very young, some of them are not able to do what we're doing here, interact back and forth through the screen. And so something that I've been doing more of lately is something I'm calling screenless teletherapy, whereby I am coaching the parents to interact with their children through their headset, headphones that they're wearing. Okay. And my screen is off. And so the child actually never knows I'm there. But it's a way to get caregivers interacting with their little people in a way that they can do, for 12 hours a day. If only anybody could stay present for that long, which we can't, but that's, right. But I can teach them some skills that really, really, really help to elicit some language. And then maybe we go in and we do a little, I like to do this. We do a little magic with, shaping things up directly. But that's been super fun to do the indirect side. And that's something I never had thought of until COVID.
Right. So that does bring me to another question, which is, it's not just about interacting with the child. Some of it is parent training that's going on.
Yeah, a big portion of speech therapy for little kids, there's 2 components. One is parent training, because parents are with their kids all the time. It's all fine and good for the speech therapist to come in for an hour a week, which is, the max usually that we see somebody. But there are umpteenth other hours in the day. You can be doing speech therapy during diaper changes. You can be doing speech therapy during dinner. You can be doing speech therapy during playtime. And in fact, that's the other, so even when we're doing direct speech therapy, in other words, we're face-to-face, a lot of that is through play, because we know that's how young children learn best, is when they're engaged and playing. And so it doesn't do a lot of good for me to sit with a, particularly not a 2-year-old, but even a 3-year-old and sort of point to pictures and do, exercise work-based, worksheet-based activities. It's not super awesome for them.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, what exactly is involved in the treatment process? And like, how long does it go on for? Is it like a set time period or?
Such a good question. It really varies from client to client. And parents ask me this all the time, obviously, and I have to say, we don't know. And the analogy I use is speech therapy is like filling a bucket with water, but we don't know what size cup we're using, and we don't know how big the bucket is. So sometimes we have a really big cup and a very small bucket, and that bucket is full and tips over. And when, in the analogy, when I'm saying the bucket tips over, we've got, full on communication. And sometimes we have a very small cup and a very big bucket, and it takes a longer time to fill it. Kids show us through their behavior what they can handle. And so it's really, really important, particularly in early intervention, because the kids don't have the ability to sort of do the cognitive override of like, this is good for me and I should do it. Right? They don't have that yet. So we have
teenagers don't have that.
Right. But we have to sort of slide in under the radar and again, make it fun, make it engaging, push them just enough without violating their boundaries, their sense of self, and their sense of success. And so it's a tricky balance in early intervention.
Well, that is. I guess if people wanted other resources, right, that they think something might be wrong, like what tips do you have for parents, especially now during COVID, where we're kind of isolated? So like maybe they're not going to the doctors as much as they would, or the preschool might be online learning, right? So I think that there's a lot of other people that would normally be catching things that are not in play right now. So what kind of tips would you have for parents?
I always tell parents to trust their gut. If they think something's going on, the most they have to lose is some money and some time. And the most they have to gain is peace of mind. And I'm not sure that you can put a price on peace of mind when it comes to our kids, right? And I just think, if that nagging feeling keeps happening, I mean, 1 day, 2 days, fine. No, but several weeks of like, I'm not sure this is going the way it's supposed to. If parents have that feeling, they should absolutely reach out. And they should just start where they can. They ask their divorce attorney, they ask their friends, their neighbors. They can always, they can absolutely contact a speech therapist. And again, when we're talking about communication, we're talking about kids who aren't talking yet. We're talking about kids who aren't talking clearly or enough. But we're also talking about kids who maybe have some really behaviors that might be alarming. We're talking about tantrums that last longer than we expect. Mm-hmm. We're talking about sort of kids who don't seem to respond to their names, for example, or don't seem to be interacting with other people. So it's this whole range of sort of human communication that we're dealing with, which is it's kind of a big thing. But I think that feeling of like, this doesn't look like what I expect, I think parents need to honor that. They really, really do.
That's a great tip. So if people wanted to contact you for further information, just kind of like, get a baseline opinion, like what's the best way to reach you?
There's lots of ways to reach me. I'm on social media at Speech Kids DC on Instagram, Speech Kids on Facebook. I have a YouTube channel that has actually a lot of informational videos on topics of interest, topics related to developmental disabilities, topics related to early childhood. There's a ton of resources on YouTube and on my website as well. I have a blog on the website, gets updated weekly. And the website is speechkids.com.
That's easy.
That's easy. Exactly. Buried the lead a little bit, but speechkids.com is probably a
That's awesome.
one-stop shop.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk today.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. And stay tuned for next time and stay safe.